Can you imagine being hunted by a paranormal creature for your whole life and seeing your beloved ones die because of it? Maybe you've heard of this famous creepypasta legend before. Some say it's fiction, but this will make you question. Let's dive into the next terrifying story about an old man and his lifelong experience with the Grinning Man. After hearing his story and horrific experiences, would you make the same decision he made? Welcome to your next Chills Before Sleep. Make sure you hit the like button and subscribe for us to provide you with more scary stories. Let us know what you think in the comments section, and don't forget to enable all notifications. My name is Levin, a 34-year-old psychiatrist. I was just transferred to work at a new mental health facility. For privacy reasons, I'm not going to name the asylum. My first patient there was Mr. Clarkson. For privacy reasons, I'm using a pseudonym for him. He was a man in his late 30s. He had been admitted into the asylum after he crashed his car into an electric pole, killing his wife on impact. We had our doubts that he was schizophrenic because he claimed he used to see apparitions. The first time I met him, it had been a cold, rainy day. A thunderstorm was afoot. The weather mirrored Mr. Clarkson's mood. I entered his room. He was sitting in front of the window in a chair. He did not look towards me when I entered the room. He did not even turn to acknowledge me. I decided to break the silence in the room. "So?" I started. "Mr. Clarkson?" He did not stir. He did not turn to look at me. "Are you my doctor?" he asked in a very low voice. "Yes," I said. "Why don't you turn the chair around and we can talk to each other?" He still did not move. "No, Doc," he said in a hoarse voice again. "I reckon I'm fine like this." I gave up and sat on the other chair in the room. "So, Mr. Clarkson," I said, "do you want to discuss what happened?" He said. "What do you know, Doc?" I hesitated. He seemed unwilling to open up. "They told me you see a man," I started, but he interrupted me. "He's here." I was taken aback. "Who's here?" I asked, puzzled. "The Grinning Man," the man said with finally some emotion in his voice. "How long have you been seeing him?" I asked. "All my life." "How far does it go?" "Back to the first thing I remember." "Tell me about it." "I think I may have been around 3 years old. My father was home. He wasn't usually home because he was always busy in the army, but this was a rare moment. My mother and father had taken me to a picnic. They were happy to be together. They were very much in love back then. I was happy to have both my parents be with me. My parents were both talking, but I was picking flowers nearby. I didn't know how, but I went too deep inside the woods while picking flowers. And when I finally came to my senses, I had no idea where I was. I was near a creek, and there were trees all around. I was going to start crying when I saw this scary man with a grin from ear to ear. He was tall, clad in black clothing. All in all, he seemed like a normal man, except for his large grin. It was almost unsettling. It was scary, but I had no other options at the time. I went to the man and asked him for help. The last thing I remember before I fell unconscious was him touching me. My parents later found me. I was sleeping in the middle of a bed of flowers. My father picked me up and took me home. When I reached home, I started telling my parents about the man I met, but they dismissed it because they thought it was just an imaginary friend. The very next day, my old man fell ill. He couldn't breathe, couldn't sleep. We called the doctor, and he said my father had tuberculosis. The doctor said it was treatable now, but apparently it wasn't. Nothing worked. My father died. My mom was a 25-year-old widow. And do you think the man had anything to do with your father's death? I asked. Oh, absolutely, he said, with a great certainty. He's an agent of death. Every time you see him, someone dies. I was writing it all down in my notepad. It seems like the man had a long history of mental illness, triggered by the death of his father at a young age. No wonder it had gone unchecked. People weren't accepting of all this ages ago. When was the next time you saw him? I asked. Well, I was about 12. He started. I was playing on the playground with my childhood friend, Emily Kirby. She was a small blonde girl. She had trouble making friends because she had trouble talking to people. She was a very shy and nervous kid. I became friends with her because our mothers worked in the same grocery store. The only difference was that my mother had to work multiple jobs to keep us afloat after my father died. We were talking on the swings when she said, "Hey, who's that?" I turned my head to look where she pointed. It was the same man that I saw when I was younger. I came to despise that man. I associated him with my father's death. He was standing across the road in his usual black clothing. He had pale white skin. He had a huge menacing grin on his face, and he had a bag in his hand. "That's my bag," Emily shouted. It was true. It looked just like the new bag that Emily's mom got her. "Mom will be mad if I lose it," she yelled as she started running across the road. "Emily, stop!" I shouted as I ran after her, but I was too late. I couldn't stop her. I looked up to see the grinning man waving at me, and then a yelp and a crunch later, he was gone. The sight in front of me was harrowing. A big man got out of the SUV and started dialing 911. It would have been of no use though. I ran to Emily's side. I held her hand and tried to feel her heartbeat, but she was gone. Of course she was gone. The road was painted with her brain matter. And that was the second time he took something I loved. So far, it seemed like he was having stress-induced hallucinations. How did it get worse? Did you see him associated with other deaths as well? I asked, looking up at him. "Yeah," he said in a somber tone. "My mother." He seemed sadder thinking about her than the others, as if he was melancholic in a way. "He took my mother." I could hear him sob now. I was 25 now, and I was working in the city as an editor. I met a beautiful girl named Tina, and love blossomed. We decided to get married a few months later. My mom was so happy when I told her. She was so happy that I was finally starting a family and settling down. And she was so eager to meet Tina. I invited her to come to my wedding. It was a beautiful summer day. Tina looked like an absolute angel in her wedding dress. It was a day I will never forget, but for the wrong reasons. The wedding went off without a hitch. I think it was the happiest that I'd ever felt. Tying the knot with my soulmate. Then came the reception, and my mom got up to make a toast. My mom talked about how it had been just us since my father died. She also told some embarrassing stories about me at the end. She talked about how much she loved Tina and how happy she was that Tina was going to be part of the family. I really loved the speech. but I was really taken out of it when I saw the same grinning man standing behind my mother. I was horrified. I asked Tina if she saw that man, but she gave me a puzzled look because she didn't see anyone. I stood up at the moment to say something, but at the same time my mother fell down, clutching her chest. Everyone surrounded her, and someone called 911, but there was no saving my mother. She was gone. Cardiac arrest. She died as she fell. Tina and I had to conduct a funeral instead of a honeymoon. I spent the first month of our marriage mourning, but Tina was always there for me. She really is my soulmate. His use of "is" stated that he did not know that his wife was dead. Was that the last time you saw him? I asked. Oh no, but I wish I had. I really wish it had been the last time. We were 33 when we found out Tina was pregnant. I thought I would never have kids, but I was so happy when I found out. I remember I picked her up in joy and kissed her forehead. We were going to be parents. I knew how bad my luck was. That's why I took extra care of Tina while she was pregnant. I loved that baby before he was born. It was an easy birth, and in just a few hours, Gabriel Marshall Clarkson was born. He had Tina's eyes. He was a beautiful baby, surely the most beautiful I've ever seen, and I loved him so much. Tina loved him as well, but it wasn't meant to be. We took him home. We fell into the daily routine of waking up, taking care of the baby, and sleeping whenever we could. We were exhausted, but we were in bliss. One day I was in Gabe's nursery. I was sitting in the rocking chair, gently rocking him to sleep. The lamp started malfunctioning. It turned off, and when it turned back on, I saw the grinning man. Just for a second, but it was enough to be embedded into my memory forever. No, 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 I cried out, waking up Gabe. Tina rushed into the room as Gabe began to cry. What's wrong? She asked, confused. I saw him, I said. I told her about the grinning man and she said she believed me at the time. But at that moment, being sleep deprived, she got annoyed and told me it wasn't real. She took Gabe from me and told me to go to sleep because I must have been sleep deprived. I told her no. I told her I wanted to stay up all night and keep an eye on Gabe, especially since I'd seen the man. She got mad at me and just told me to go. I guess I wasn't supposed to fight with a young mother. She told me to go sleep and she'll take care of Gabe. I agreed to it, but I shouldn't have. I went to sleep, but I woke up to Tina screaming. I rushed into the nursery and saw Tina crying, holding Gabe. He wasn't breathing. We rushed him to the hospital, but there was nothing the doctors could do. It was SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome. Just like that, he was taken away from us. Mr. Clarkson had obviously faced a lot of death in his life. Could his grief be fueling his mental illness? But that wasn't the last time you saw him? I asked. He laughed out loud, but there was nothing funny about it. It was the laugh of a man who was tired of life. Oh, no, he said. After Gabe's death, Tina was a mess. She was a grieving mother. She was inconsolable. She blamed herself for Gabe's death. She was always crying, always sobbing. She just wanted her baby back, and I couldn't give that to her. I hated myself for that. I felt like it was my curse. My curse had taken away my son. My curse had now made my wife a living shell of her former self. That day, I was supposed to take Tina to her grieving mother's support group. While we were in the car waiting at the stop sign, I saw the grinning man standing in front of the pole. This was my chance. I had to end it. I asked Tina if she saw the man, but she said she didn't. I had made up my mind. I was going to run him over. I was going to end it once and for all. Tina was screaming all the way, and she was calling me insane, but I wasn't going to stop. I crashed the car into the pole. The last thing I saw before I lost consciousness was the man's large grin. When I woke up, I was in the hospital. The police came and asked me what had happened. I told them about the man, but they said that there had not been a man. Then, when I got discharged from the hospital, they sent me here. He finally turned to look at me. By the way, where is Tina? His face seemed old and pale, even though he wasn't even in his early 40s. Oh, I clutched my notepad tight, and I looked at Mr. Clarkson. Actually, Miss Tina Clarkson died on impact. His face instantly fell. He was horrified. Leave, he said as he turned back again. Mr. Clark, he cut me off and yelled at me to leave. I got up and left the room because I had told him something big, and I did not want to aggravate him. Mr. Clarkson seemed to just have delusions. The sad part was that these delusions had led to the death of his wife, and almost his death as well. I drove back home that evening and kept feeling uneasy. I drove for a while, and when I reached home, I saw a man in my rearview mirror. The man was tall, with pale skin, and a big grin plastered on his face. I felt unsettled and scared of him. I didn't know what I was looking at, but I felt like I knew exactly who he was, and the doom and destruction he brings. I looked back, but nothing was there. Just then I got a call from the hospital. Mr. Clarkson had somehow smuggled a knife into his room and committed suicide. He couldn't take the news of his wife's death. I was shocked for a moment, but I hoped he was at peace with his wife and son. And as for the man I saw, it has to be a vision, right? I've been working hard, so it must have been due to being tired and sleep deprived. This was not the grinning man. Or was he? Thank you for watching this video. Have you experienced a similar situation or another scary experience? Don't hesitate to submit your story by email or in the comments section down below. Ready for your next chills before sleep? Make sure you hit the like button and subscribe for us to provide you with more scary stories. Let us know what you think and don't forget to enable all notifications. Be the first ones to get the chills.